for a snack to be healthy, there's so much more than that. And it's not only about nutritional facts and physical health, but also, mental health. When we think about how much a snack can be powerful in that end, it's really interesting. Like we have some stats that from our snacking report, there's a state of snacking report. That's the name of the report that we kind of like do every year for 6 years now. It's led by our global team, and it's really interesting to see, like they interview 4,000 different consumers around the globe, and they evaluate the impact that snacks have, not only for their physical health, but mental health as well. So
Welcome back
to another episode of the Innovate on Purpose podcast, hosted by Matt Mueller,
best-selling author of The Mindful Innovator and Rethink Retail's top retail expert.
We can help retail leaders find clarity so they can grow their businesses purposefully.
We will uncover mindful tips, innovative solutions, and purposeful leadership advice and strategies that you can apply immediately to your retail innovation.
Are you ready to innovate on purpose?
Hey, before we jump into the episode today, I just wanted to say thank you for hitting the play button. You being here fires me up, and I cannot wait to share with you the insights that are going to make a difference in your business. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and leave a review so I can reach as many retail leaders as possible. They too need to hear this. Okay, let's do it. Hello and welcome to another episode of Innovate on Purpose. Today we're going to be discussing snacking for a better future, innovating with purpose at Mondelez. This is something that is near and dear to my heart because I'm all about innovating with purpose. I understand how challenging it can be for our businesses to find innovation that's actually going to drive impact to the bottom line at the same time as really just be beneficial for everyone. And I know Mondelez has been doing it right for a very long time. I've been watching from the distance and seeing exactly how they are innovating with purpose. And it's cool to see how the snacking category is coming along. Part of watching that category come along, Victoria Diaz has been a huge part of that. And she is here today to talk to us about how we can create snacking for a better future. So Victoria, it is so great to see you today. Thank you for coming on the show.
thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk about it. Snacking is my favorite subject for sure.
Same here. Yeah, since I was a kid.
100%.
All right, so let's dig into it. First, can you just give us a little bit of background on yourself and Mondelez?
Yeah, of course. So I've been working with CPG and consumer insights for the past 10 years now. I'm originally from Brazil. I moved to Canada. It's been 2.5-ish years. And since I've been here in Canada as an immigrant, I've joined Mondelez as their insights manager for the biggest categories that they have here, which is cookies and crackers. We call biscuits, which is a combination of both. And as you know, Mondelez in Canada is the #1 manufacturer for biscuits with iconic brands like Oreo, Ritz, Chips Ahoy, Crispers. So you name it. We have so much fun, and there's so many initiatives being done here in Canada. And I had the opportunity to be a part of it, of all the strategy and amazing things that our marketing team is doing. So that's just, me in a nutshell.
It's awesome. Like, I think we were actually listing off all the things in my cabinet right now when you were talking about the different brands.
Awesome. Let's see how many brands you actually consume from Mondelez.
Right. Seriously. So tell us a little bit about like innovating with purpose. I love that you guys are on the same page with me here because I talk a lot about purpose. In fact, the podcast is called Innovate on Purpose. So what does that mean exactly to you guys?
Yeah, I think it varies for each and every industry and company. For Mondelez, it's all about making sure that we are creating something meaningful and sustainable with our products that ultimately is going to meet consumer needs. So it ranges from not only, how much we are positively sourcing or matters like the raw matter that we use for our products, but also how we give back to community as well. So it's a whole umbrella. But if I could put in 4 easy steps for you, I would say the first one is 100% be consumer centric. Everything that we do, every innovation we put in the market is consumer validated and tested in some level. So making sure innovations is meeting consumer needs for their everyday life. Also, we tend to always skew to sustainability, making sure we are sustainable sourcing from whatever it is that we're doing. We do have reducing impact in the environment, our packagings are recyclable, like all of that shebang. Also making sure that we are promoting wellness and health. And what I mean by that is not only offering consumers a range of portfolio that they can choose from, being gluten-free, no artificial sweeteners, no artificial colors, high in fiber, organic, no GMO, like all of that. Because sometimes consumers, they get really stuck into the percentage of fat or the percent of sugar. But actually, for a snack to be healthy, there's so much more than that. And it's not only about nutritional facts and physical health, but also, mental health. When we think about how much a snack can be powerful in that end, it's really interesting. Like, we have some stats that from our snacking report, there's a state of snacking report. That's the name of the report that we kind of like do every year for 6 years now. It's led by our global team, and it's really interesting to see, like, they interview 4,000 different consumers around the globe, and they evaluate the impact that snacks have not only for their physical health but mental health as well. So just to give you a little bit of a context, here in Canada, snacking penetration is 99%, right? So like it's a household staple. So when we look at the stats of how actually snacks plays a role, 81% of consumers agree that snacking is my way of treating myself after a very productive day. It's a pick me up. It can be a chocolate bar, it can be an Oreo. It's something that I'm rewarding myself for. 71% agree that sharing a snack is actually a love language, which is really interesting. If you think in a household with a family or friends, and you have, the family pack size, something that people can go around the table and make sure they are having a tasty snack and sharing about their days and how things are. And lastly, when we think about the younger generations, snacking is even bigger versus the old generations. And we asked consumers in this specific research, would they give up social media for a month if that means that they can have their favorite snacks every day? And 30% of Gen Zers said yes. So it's really interesting to see how much of a role snacks plays, right?
Wow, that's a big stat right there. I am
Mhm.
actually very surprised by that. That almost 1/3 of Gen Z would say, "Yeah, take my phone. I'm good for snacks." But
Which is crazy because
yeah,
they're so connected and
that is nuts. Yeah, absolutely. And I totally relate to the like where like sharing a snack, it's a love language, right? Like
Mhm.
every time I leave the house or when I come home, I always try and stop at the store and bring home a snack for my wife, just because I know that's her love language. So it's
Yeah,
like,
that's
absolutely.
absolutely it. Amazing. I hope it's Oreo though.
Sometimes it is, absolutely. Actually, the other day it was the Post Malone Oreos that I brought home.
Ooh,
Yeah, pretty good snack right
amazing.
there. Yeah, and you also mentioned like the consumer centric piece. I think that is
Mhm.
important. All four pillars absolutely important, but consumer centricity I think is like absolutely the biggest piece, because if it's not going to connect to the consumer, I mean, then we're not going to be able to have the impact, like, sustainability wise, and everything else. So when you look at consumer trends, like what are like the major consumer trends right now that are shaping the future of snacking?
I think that's a $1 million question. I think, as someone that have been working with insights analytics for the past 10 years, it's more of an art and science than a science itself. So it's to simplify the answer, it would be just making sure we're still relevant for that consumer, no matter where they are in life. Because if you think about the consumer cycle, they come from a very young Gen Zer that's stressed with studies to someone that's going to be a household, in a family household in the future, probably with a full-time job, other responsibilities, a completely different routine. So how does Next navigate this different life cycles of consumers and how you can still maintain relevant throughout their own life cycles and life choices on top of everything that is happening in the macro environment, like tariffs, inflation, different shifts of channels, like all of that good stuff that we also need to keep above with our innovations, our launches, and our plans. So it's a tricky question, but I think the simple answer is how we can like really connect with consumers in a almost like a daily basis and make sure that we're relevant, still relevant to them. And if we're not, what are the shifts and how can we course correct and make sure our products still matter? for
Yeah,
every
and I guess
day.
it's hard to answer that question, especially if you think on the macro level of all consumers. Like, how do you
Yeah.
keep how do you keep in tap with consumer trends with 99% of penetration in Canada? Like, yeah, that's a little difficult. But if we were
And
to narrow it down to like that Gen Z consumer, if we go down to
mhm.
that level, are there any particular trends that the Gen Z consumer is like more relevant for than others?
Yeah, so for Gen Zers, they're such a unique and special type of consumer. I think it really depends on the categories. For example, when it comes to the savor categories and salty snacks, we're seeing more spiciness. For Canada specifically, multicultural ingredients are coming along as well that we can tap into to connect with that much relevant consumer that's going to be a third of our population by 2040. They are also hyper connected, making sure that we are relevant in all the screens that they tap into. It's really important. And you mentioned Oreo and Post Malone partnership. Those very exciting partnerships with global celebrities or even global brands like Oreo and Coke that we just launched in the beginning of the year. Those are the things that Gen Zers feel connected as a brand that is more on top of the trends, that is connected to the pop culture, to the everyday life. So those things that we do are really intentional, and in a more packaging slash price per unit way. When you think about Gen Z, most of them, they are students, they don't have much money for snacking, they don't have much money for anything, especially in this economy. So how can we bring different options for them which are low unit price that they can afford, and have in the everyday between study sessions?
Yeah, that's it's super relevant stuff for Gen Z, and like the one that my son would care about the most is how do I get more snacks in my
How old is your
closet.
son?
He's 17 years old.
Oh, okay, so he's very Gen Z. Interesting. I
He's
want to talk to him.
very yeah. But yeah, he's like always going up the block to the store and picking up snacks and hiding them in his room. So I get to like look in his closet to see what the trends are really for Gen Z, which is kind of
And I think that's a great insight right there, like the dollar store. They are full of Gen Zers, and how can then we create products that are like intentionally only exist for that specific channel? We have that. So
yeah,
yeah, it's all about understanding their needs.
absolutely. So I want to go back into like now with consumer insights. One of the hardest things that I kind of experienced when I was starting an innovation team in CPG
Hmm.
space was taking those insights and then basically bring them to life. Like, what advice would you give somebody that's like in insights, and how do you get that insight to turn into action?
I think it's well, first of all, I don't think it's a one person job. I think literally it's a team job. It is a village to create an innovation, make it hit market. So making sure as an insights person, you are fully connected with your marketing team and making sure that you understand their objectives alongside to the type of consumer they want to reach. So let's say my marketing team has a very, a very tough challenge to connect more with Gen Zers to a brand that is dying. Okay, how as an insights person I can bring the best of what Gen Zers look for in that specific category or for that specific brand, understand where we are, what we can be, while still maintaining true to the brand's purpose, because we don't want to kill the brands. We have to maintain the brands as they are, and be I want to say loyal, but it's not exactly that word. Like be true to their purpose and making sure that it's going to steam in a different way. Because I can like let's take Oreo for example. Oreo, it's all about playfulness. How I show up being playful for a Gen Z is going to be completely different for a millennial or a Gen X. And the way that I can enroll that to my consumer in an effective way, that's how INA comes in and tell you how to decode that consumer specifically.
Hmm.
So if I can, just summarize, I think that would be one of the ways. Just stay on
Yeah,
top of your consumer and also what your marketing team wants.
I think that's huge. Yeah, and for me, I think it was like bring them in for the journey earlier than later. So whenever I presented out insights and say, hey, this is what we're seeing from the consumer, and these are the directions that we need to move, would be like, okay, cool, thank you. I got the deck. I put it in my file cabinet, and it's gone. But
Yeah.
if you bring them in earlier, hey, what do we need to learn from the consumer? What exactly are your objectives? And we start to collaborate and get people early on. That's really where I see like that's how we bring those insights into action. So
And not
totally
only
agree.
that, I think one thing that we did in the past also for different brands that we're trying to innovate, put your marketing in front of the consumer. Like we did consumer fairs. We made them talk because sometimes we just got lost into data translation. No, here's a human being. Talk to them. Look what they're like, hear what they're saying, look what they're doing. So I think that's also something that is within your budget. It's 100% something that you should do. And on top of that is fully kind of like making sure that you're not, I always call this like being dolphin person, which is like the dolphin comes out of the ocean then goes back in the ocean, you never see it again. So
Mhm.
making sure that like you're a partner that is there for the post actions after you deliver a certain result, and make sure things are being done in a way that it's right to what you have recommended, and if shift, how you can then support the shift, right? So I think it's a little bit of
Totally. I love it. Yeah. It's actually reminds me of a couple of projects I worked on with some clients where we did take them along in home shop alongs, in home
yeah,
interviews and shop alongs. And it was so cool because when you're taking these executives like CEOs and presidents and vice presidents of a company and bringing them into the homes of a shopper and getting those insights live with them, they go back into the meetings, they go back into the hallways of that office and they say, no, this is what really matters to our customer. I was there. And they start to tell those stories to everybody and it just keeps those insights alive. So totally agree.
absolutely. I remember when back in Brazil when I was working at Unilever with Rexona and Dove, one of my categories was deodorants. And I remember I did one of those shopping trips with one of the executives from Global. And you can imagine, he sits in the UK, it's a third world country. We're going to a low income household. It's a completely different shift of mentality for him. And I remember what really kind of like impressed him was the fact that when we walked into this person's bathroom, there's no way to storage the product. Like it was so cramped, it was so small. He was like, okay, we need to think about better ways of how our packaging can be easily storage. And I was like, okay, this is an amazing insight. We never would be talking about this if we wouldn't, went
Yeah.
to this consumer experience household. So it's spot on what you're saying. It's just bringing
Yeah.
reality to them in a very
Absolutely. Yeah. And
effective
if you
way.
were to put that in a report and say, hey, this is what's happening, like they don't have room to store their products. Okay, cool. And let's keep on going. Nothing would happen.
Exactly.
Nothing would
It's
change.
just going
So
to be lost in the pile of priorities. So yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Well, awesome. I want to shift a little bit now to like people and planet because I know that's really important to Mondelez. Like
Hmm.
when we think about consumer expectations in health and sustainability, it's a moving target, right? It's like we all know that those are becoming more and more important for consumers. But like, what do you see as basically the 2025 version of health and sustainability?
I think consumers are every day more being an advocate for brands that are going into the sustainability and mindful sourcing path. And they do have in the fingertips of their hands the ability to just look up and see what's true and what's bullshit. And so the greenwashing that was done back in the day, it's no longer something that Gen Zers, especially Gen Zers, the younger generation, is going to keep up and put up with. They know which brands they should be advocating for and which brands are real and which brands are just surfing a certain trend. So, in order to make sure that we are giving the transparent way to how Mondelez is innovating, what we do, and what are our big, goals for the next years to come. There's so many cool initiatives, and I actually brought some data for you on that front because there's so many things that Mondelez do, and I didn't even know how many things and targets there were before I started looking for our conversations. Just to give you paint you a little bit of an example in a macro level, and this is globally speaking, not only for Canada but globally, Mondelez is 100% behind having sustainable ingredients in its products. So when we think about, for 2025, there's a target to achieve 100% of more sustainable ingredients with cocoa volume for our chocolate brands through the Cocoa Life Foundation, which is a foundation that we partner up with Oreo and Cadbury and all those, brands that needs cocoa. When it comes to climate, there's a very steep percentage of absolute water usage and waste reduction around 10 to 15% globally that we need to achieve by 2025 versus our 2028 standards. And when we think about social impact, there is by 2025 too, aim to cover all cocoa alive communities in West Africa with child labor monitoring and remediation systems, making sure that we are sourcing our cocoa responsibly, and there's no child labor involved whatsoever. And when we think about diversity and equity, and that's my absolutely favorite stats from all of them, is Mondelez has for this year the target to double representation of women in executive leadership roles. And I'm proud to say that in Canada, we have a president BU, a marketing VP, and an INA senior director. They're all women. So I think what I can kind of like summarize from all the trends is it's not only about being sustainable or doing the right from the inside out, but also outside in. It's a vice, it's a whole macro environment that needs to be conversing, and what you do internally stems from the outside. One thing that I also mentioned to another person when I was talking to them about Mondelez, and that I'm really proud of, and that's specific in Canada. Mondelez is all about food. So there's a lot of donation for food banks and making sure that we're giving back to community. Like they literally carve out time so we can go back and do voluntary work in our daily hours just because we know how important that is. And that stems from your employees, your brands, your supply cycle. So I would say there's no right answer. It's just if you're doing good and that's genuine, as a corporation, you have that values and philosophy, that's going to stem for your consumers.
That's beautiful. Thank you for bringing those numbers, because that's just like, it's so cool to see like the impact that Mondelez is having on this trend. And you're right. It's like it's making sure that you are looking at all the touch points, and just like what you said earlier too. It's like consumers are seeing past the bullshit. Like
Yeah.
they know when it's just surface level and like, oh yeah, we're going to be net carbon zero, but they don't give you any data or facts behind that. Or actually, I was working on a consumer project recently where it was about ocean-bound plastics or sustainability, and we were discussing like, what is ocean-bound plastic, and it was interesting to see the older consumer what they were saying about it versus what the younger consumer was saying about
Interesting.
it. And the older consumer was like, this is great, this is saving, it's cleaning up the oceans and putting and taking away all that plastic, and we're reusing that. It's like, an awesome mission.
Mhm.
And the Gen Z consumer and younger millennial were like, no, that's actually bullshit, because zero ocean bound plastic, it's not in the ocean, it's just in landfills that are 50 miles away from an ocean. So it actually isn't doing what it's saying it's doing, or what it claims it, or it looks like it claims to do. So they
Yeah.
are seeing it. They're going deeper and getting that knowledge and coming back and saying, no, I'm sorry, brand, that doesn't work for us.
Interesting. Yeah, they are so well informed and so well versed, even more than I am. And honestly, I'm not the, most greener advocate person, but I do think that I am smart, and that would 100% befool me because I don't dig deep enough. And I know that there's so many brands doing things that they don't actually are doing the best way that they can, or trying just to surf a trend. And I think that's going to become even less acceptable in the future. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, like, talk about like the trends, what we're seeing from consumers, the importance of people and planet. But at the end of the day, Mondelez is a business, and we have to have innovation that's going to impact the business, right? So, like,
Mhm.
how do you balance all that out and make sure that it's just innovation is just not a flavor? Like, how do you actually get to that meaningful innovation that's going to have an impact?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think when it comes to, innovate, we make sure that Mondelez is providing consumers to meaningful innovations, as I mentioned, not to be just a waste of space on shelf. So we have rigorous guidelines internally to test the majority of our innovations across our categories, especially when it comes to our invest or global brands like Oreo, Ritz, Cadbury. So we do have created an internal framework with like 5 different innovation types that can be classified from what we understand would be more disruptive, what we call beyond the core, to less disruptive, like line or flavor extensions or even packaging changes. So depending on the type of the innovation, we have different action standards. And those action standards has to be followed to make sure the innovation will be considered successful and relevant to consumers if we launch in the market, right? So to make sure that's happening, we have certain KPIs like incrementality levels, purchase intent, believability by consumers, trial potential, and you name it. And of course, the more disruptive innovations is going to have a higher action standards versus only flavor or line extensions. However, I do want to caveat that, flavor extensions can add a lot of value and excitement if done properly. So, as you mentioned, for example, our global Oreo team did those two new limited edition flavors like Cocoa's Oreo and Post Malone partnership. And this is all designed to elevate the snacking experience while connecting to a younger generation and making sure that it's, excitement. And even though cookies tends to be a category that's more exciting than others, making sure that Oreo as a number one brand is bringing that excitement as the role that the number one brand has to have in the category it can be done by flavors, by simply putting a flavor out, but it's way much more than that. It's how you kind of like bring those assets to life in a cool and fun way with other brands or other celebrities. One thing that I want to mention, and just to finalize a little bit that thought on that, is that sometimes innovations, they fail our action centers, right? Like sometimes we think we create something awesome, and when we actually test and talk with consumers, that's actually not the case. There's certain things that we can do better or make sure that we do it differently. So what we do as an insights person is we make sure that the marketing team's aware of what went wrong and what can be done better as an opportunity for us to become even bigger. And once they kind of like course correct or like change a little bit of what needs to be done, we then test again and hopefully launch in market. So that's kind of like how things go internally.
Robust, which is awesome. Just to kind of hear, like, there is so many different types of innovation, and just to say, hey, how does innovation have an impact? It's hard to really kind of put a number to that or one particular way to go about it. So I love that you're thinking about it as far as like, what is the incrementality of it versus the disruption of it, and looking at it differently, because a disruptive innovation concept is going to have a lot of a different direction or a different type of impact versus something that's incremental. So I think that's really just wise a way to approach it. And I love that you're also talking, Victoria, about the iteration process, right? Because innovation, you are going to have failures. So, but what are you learning from it, applying from it, and then going back out and retesting? So it sounds like you have a great team that's actually super connected in between the different layers.
Yeah, and also the Pulse launch, right? Like we always talk about how you do all this work, you launch the innovation, then you forget about it. And then when you see all the distribution levels are down, the price it's completely what's not supposed to be. So like making sure innovation is successful for the first 2 years, specifically the first 2 years, is going back to the main stats and how you're executing it to stay maintaining its relevancy. So
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of reminds me when I first started off on the innovation team. Like we would go launch, get really excited about it, go out and have a drink. And then afterwards, like toast, all right, cool, we did it. And then let's go on to the next project.
Next to right to the next one. Exactly.
Yeah. How do you keep the plate spinning? How do you keep the momentum going on those concepts is so important. And 2 years is a good amount of time. I do think that's about the same amount of time that we were using as far as like looking at it and saying, okay, this has been a success. It stayed. Otherwise, like sometimes it'll just kind of continually drop down and falter, which
is fine if you want to do LTOs. Limited time editions is for that. It's to generate excitement and then never to see again. But like if it's an innovation that we did all the research that we think is going to be relevant for a lifelong time of consumers, then we should be doing our due diligence to make sure it's being correctly done. So
absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Now, the last part I want to get to, the brand is Mondelez. I want to have a little bit of fun. I want to ask you lightning round questions here. I'm just really curious, like right now, what Mondelez product do you always have at home? Like what is like your go-to?
Okay, I'm going to tell you a little secret. So as a Mondelez employee, we do have access to our internal store that's only for employees. And we have a massive discount in all of the products. So I always have a full, Mondelez portfolio in my house. My favorite ones is mini eggs, my absolutely favorite Mondelez SKU. Mini eggs. Have you ever had mini eggs?
No.
Oh my God.
I have not.
I'll have to ship one to your home. Honestly, It's my favorite chocolate of all times. I have a sweet tooth, so I absolutely love mini eggs. I munch them. It's super dangerous. Cadbury Dairy Milk Classic Chocolate Bar. Love it. Oreos and Ritz Chips Crackers. I don't know if you have Ritz Chips Crackers in US.
I actually got some yesterday.
Amazing. I love it. Sour cream for me is the best one. So
Mhm.
yeah, those are my favorite brands and SKUs for sure. And I cannot believe you never tasted mini eggs. I'll have to say to
Yeah,
you.
I can't believe that either. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm missing out. But I think I have almost every single other one of those snacks in my shelf right now. But yeah, I got the Ritz crackers, chips cracker yesterday, so sour cream.
Amazing. It's the best
Yes.
one.
Now, what if you were able to create your own dream snack? Like anything you want, what would you make?
I had so much fun thinking about that. So honestly, I would say it would be a very tasty, probably in the sweet size, 0 or even negative calorie, with the ability to provide me the focus or fast learning properties while I snack. So I'll have all the benefits, none of the downside, and I can be working, studying, just watching TV, and I'll be super focused or super aware of everything that's going on while like tasting this amazing Cadbury chocolate in my mouth. So
That sounds
yep.
good. If you could send me some of that too, that'd be great.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know. It's $1 billion
Yeah.
SKU for sure.
That's like actually one of the craziest trends, or not the craziest, but one of the biggest trends that I saw last week at Expo West in Anaheim was all about focus and clarity. Like everybody is getting in on that trend, and you're not seeing it as much in the snacking category just yet. Like you're seeing it like mostly in beverage, you're seeing it in like some types of food products, but in the snacking category, there's definitely an opportunity there. I
Yeah,
could
maybe
definitely see
there's
like
a
a dark
trend there
chocolate.
that we can explore, especially because like with the younger generations, I think ADHD is becoming even more a thing. And there's so many distractions, so many things going on all the time. So like we are more prone to not pay attention, not to focus anymore. There's micro focuses everywhere, right? Like, and you have to
Yeah,
be hyper aware. So it's really interesting.
it is. Yeah. All right. And last question. What's one consumer snacking myth that needs to be busted right now? Like, what do you guys just stop it? Stop talking about this. It's not true. What is that?
Honestly, I think the idea that snacking is bad for you. There's a study done, I think it was 2014, so more than 10 years ago, that found out that if snacking is either beneficial or not for your health will depend on a number of factors, right? Like including your age, your attitude towards snacking, meaning the frequency or the quantity or the quality of what you snack. So it's never healthy to feel hungry or low in energy. And often snacking is actually a solution for that. It's convenient. It can be part of a very busy lifestyle. You have so many nowadays, right? We have different varieties of snacks that can be nutrient rich options like high in fiber, crackers that is high in fiber, or even a snack bars that are high in protein, or chocolate that is like organic and high in cocoa. So like there's so many different choices. And even the more indulgent ones, if you do introduce them into a very balanced diet, there's no unhealthiness there. There's a positive mental and physical health that can be, steam and be benefited from that specific snacks. I would say it's not about snacking; it's about how you snack that make things unhealthy. And saying that all snacks are unhealthy is just not true. Of
Thank you for busting that myth.
course.
It's an awesome one. I love that. I totally agree. Like, yeah, snacking doesn't have to be unhealthy, and in fact, yeah, most snacks are good for you. It's just a matter
Mhm.
of, well, what do they say? Moderation is key, right? Moderation is key, and making sure that you're choosing the right snacks that balance out your diet is so important, and definitely much better than being hungry and low energy.
And there's so many guidelines and national rules and laws that we need to follow to make sure the snack is safe. The snack is have the right properties. And Mondelez team, so many nutrition, so many food scientists. Like there's so many high skilled, intelligent people behind everything that we put out in the market that it offends me almost saying that snacking is not healthy because it is. It can be.
Absolutely awesome. And I gotta say, I'm a little jealous that you have access to a private library of snacks. I might
Yeah,
start
I would be
applying for
jealous
jobs
if
right
I
now.
was you too.
Well, Victoria, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You have definitely schooled us in the world of snacking, so I appreciate you and thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having this amazing platform. Thank you for inviting the most amazing professionals out there to talk about innovations and purposefulness and mindfulness. It's so awesome to, have someone advocating for that. So lovely how you do. So keep going, keep doing that. And it was a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. My favorite topic, snacks. What are some of the biggest consumer trends in the snacking industry? What are the best in class techniques for turning insights into action? And what consumer trend myths need to be busted? We'll cover that and more today with our fascinating guest, Victoria Diaz. She is an insights and shopper manager at Mondelez International in Canada, with a remarkable track record of driving insights for powerhouse brands like Oreo, Ritz, Cliff, contributing over $2 billion in sales. With a decade of experience in the CPG industry, her groundbreaking strategies led to her winning my favorite topic, snacks. What are some of the biggest consumer trends in the snacking industry? What are the best-in-class techniques for turning insights into action? And what consumer trend myths need to be busted? We'll cover that and more with our fascinating guest today, Victoria Diaz. She is the Insights and Shopper Manager at Mondelez International in Canada, with a remarkable track record of driving insights for powerhouse brands such as Oreo, Ritz, and Cliff, contributing to over $2 billion in sales. With a decade of experience in the CPG industry, her groundbreaking strategies led to her winning the prestigious Global INA Award for Innovation Excellence in her very first year at Mondelez Canada. Previously at Unilever, she shaped insights for Rexona and Dove, a $833 million business. And with a track record across 2 continents, Victoria is a master at transforming data into compelling narratives and decoding consumer needs, all while executing dynamic, consumer-centric strategies in a fast-paced landscape. Let's dig in. We have made it to the end of another episode. Thank you for tuning in. A couple of things before you go. If you have found value in this episode, I am sure you'll find value in what we have coming up. So please subscribe so you will have access and know when we launch the next episode. Also, leave a review. The more reviews we have, the further our reach becomes, and I truly want this to be heard by as many leaders as possible. Don't hog this all for yourself. I would love to hear your insights on this topic, so meet me on social media at Matt Mueller Innovation on LinkedIn and Instagram. And lastly, if you want to learn more about my story and what I can do for you and your company, go to themindfulinnovator.com. I would love to help you innovate on purpose. Until next time, just remember, bring a level of awareness to each conversation, each observation, each moment, and you can create great change in this world. Thank you.